Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. So make sure you sit back, relax, and if you're new here, subscribe. And alright, anyways, let's get into the first story. So, I, 24 male, have lived on my own for about 2 years now. I have a very small bungalow I'm able to pretty comfortably afford. In this bungalow, I have an attic area. At a guess, I'd say it's about 5 by 5 meters in size, and you can only really stand in there in the very center. Anyways, I work the night shift at a factory. I basically just sit on my phone all night. So I usually get in at around 8 a.m. I was coming home last Thursday during a heavy storm, and I got into the house and just went to sleep. When I woke up, I went on my phone and saw that I was so tired that I didn't check my notifications. I have a Ring camera outside my door, which shows me anyone who would have come to my room. I saw that it had been tripped at 7:42 a.m. I got into the house at around 8:10 to 8:15 a.m. I checked the video and saw that it was a man. He was pressed right up to the door and was fumbling around with the handle. He did this for about 10 seconds until he spotted the camera. Once he did, he quickly scuttled away. This unsettled me but didn't entirely creep me out or anything. I got up to go make some food and discovered something in my kitchen. My back window was open. I, of course, instantly began having the thoughts of a home intruder, but slowly chilled out as I convinced myself I had left it open. The rest of the day consisted of this, just noticing small things that didn't seem right and scaring myself, all up until a point. I leave for the shift at 10 p.m. and I was watching some TV at 9 o'clock-ish. I spotted something that made my heart leap into my throat. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see it. My attic entrance was slowly being slid open. I can so vividly remember that I began questioning my sanity. Surely I was just hallucinating or something. I looked over at it and absolutely saw something that made me so much more scared. I saw fingers wrap around the hatch and begin moving it more. I didn't know what to do. I could feel the panic beginning to really get to me, and I wasn't sure if I should leave the house and call the police or if I should try and yell at whoever was up there. I chose a mixture of both. I began dialing 911 and ran to my bedroom where I could lock the door. As soon as I began running, I heard the hatch get almost teared off with the speed they moved it, and I arrived at my bedroom door. I looked down the corridor and watched for a second, seeing only a little slice of the blackness up in my attic, and I saw the human hands still holding onto the slides of my ceiling. I yelled, "Whoever is there, I'm calling the police, and I have a gun." I do not own a gun. If you take a step out of there, I will fucking shoot you. The adrenaline was really making my hands and voice shake, but I tried sounding as tough as I could. Then I saw something that I truly do not think I will ever forget. The hands slipped back into the dark, and then he dropped down. I slammed my door shut and locked it as quickly as I could. The call went through, and I was able to get on a line with the police, and they dispatched officers to my house. I told them I didn't know if the man was armed or not, and the dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I heard the man walking up to my door and rattling the door handle. He also seemingly went through my cupboards in my kitchen, as I heard a lot of commotion there. Truth be told, I don't know why he stayed. I would have just left the house, but he stayed right up until the police came in and arrested him. Apparently he was a homeless man and was armed with a knife from my kitchen and had recently been seen in the area trying to get into other houses. Truth be told, I'm very frightened to sleep still. I now sleep with my bedroom door locked and all my windows closed. I also sleep with a knife under my pillow. I know that this is unlikely to ever happen again, but I just cannot forget the way he dropped down from my attic. So that's the story of the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I made this account to tell it because I feel like if I write it down like this, it will feel less like a real thing and more like just a story. When I was in the service, I worked with power generation equipment in an M1A1 Abrams tank unit. One type of track support vehicle had a small generator mounted on top to power the equipment inside, such as radios, computers, etc. The vehicle driver was responsible for normal maintenance checks for the gas engine that ran the thing, which was pretty small. I'd get a call during a field exercise that one of my track-mounted units was having a serious problem and was putting a ton of thick white smoke out of its exhaust and wouldn't stay running. Thick white smoke? I resignedly confirmed. Don't tell me. Let me guess. Private dumbass, right? Nailed it in one, beamed Corporal Scherderfrud. Our motor pool Schroeder. This particular soldier was one of those truly special individuals who couldn't pour water out of a boot if the instructions were printed on the bottom. I head over to the vehicle line and follow the still lingering smoke signals to his rig. What did he do to it now? I asked. Nothing. It stopped running, so I checked the oil this time, like you showed me, he proudly replied. My eye twitched at the memory of the untimely demise of his previous generator belonging to his vehicle. And was it low? I queried, starting to confirm my working hypothesis. Man, was it ever, he excitedly replied. I filled it back up, but it took an entire oil can. Then I started it back up, but it started smoking and died again. I've been trying for the last 30 minutes, but it won't stay running. Twitch. Would you mind showing me exactly where you were able to pour nearly 5 gallons of motor oil into this engine that holds no more than a quart or so normally? I asked with a deceptive calmness. This guy couldn't find his own asshole with both of his hands and a flashlight. But he was finding his way to the conclusion that he had fucked up somehow fairly accurately. To my utter lack of surprise, he began unscrewing the generator's gas cap. I poured it in here. And where do you normally fill it with gas? I asked ever so sweetly. He looked at me, looked at the gas tank of the generator, looked at the empty 5-gallon motor oil drum, and then looked back at me. Oh, he explained. I'm a hunter. I like to hunt wild boar specifically. Though I have been deer hunting and have been known to get a turkey for Thanksgiving, I mostly hunt boar. For those of you that don't know, boar are a big problem in the United States. A sow can have 2 litters a year, and it's not uncommon for a litter to consist of 10 or more pigs. Given that pigs eat anything and everything, it's not hard to see why the Department of Fish and Wildlife makes it legal to hunt them with almost no restrictions. In my state, it's illegal to hunt most large mammals with night or thermal vision scopes, with the exception of boar and coyote. I've been saving for a year, mostly fun money. It's hard to explain to your wife that a scope that costs literally twice as much as the rifle I was mounting it on was worth it. But I did. I took it to a range and sighted it in. There was an area that was peppered with boar activity that I knew would be perfect for a night hunt. It was easily accessible with my truck, with easy to find spots that I could set up in that overlooked a large and easy to navigate clearing. The night started uneventful, mostly me tinkering with my new toy, cycling through the settings. I was a little impatient. I had spotted multiple deer, but they were out of season, and like I mentioned earlier, my current setup wasn't legal for deer. I moved to another spot I'd seen days earlier that probably wasn't much better than my first, but it gave me something to do and a new angle to look around with my new scope. After an hour or so of glassing the area, it dawned on me. This spot doesn't have much animal activity at all. No rabbit or owls. The deer that I'd seen were hundreds of yards from where I was. Why was this pocket of land so dead at night but lively in the day? I'd set up around 10 p.m. and it was about 2 a.m. when I started to think about packing up, maybe setting up a target before I left and taking some practice shots. I heard a crunch come from the direction I came from before. I panned my scope over and saw the silhouette of a small bear pushing through the bushes. It's important to note that my scope isn't exactly night vision, it's a thermal scope, kind of like a black and white version of what you see in the Predator movies. I adjusted my range and zoomed in a little. I remember jolting a little when I saw that it wasn't really a bear, it was a man. Because he was so low and hunched over, I thought I was looking at a young bear. Is that a game warden? It couldn't be. I would have seen the headlights coming out the road from where I was perched. And where could he have walked from? I was 30 miles away from anything and on public lands. I was about to call out when I adjusted my sights and noticed he was naked. No shoes, pants, or anything. I remember being disturbed by his movements, like a squirrel or something, twitchy and grabbing at the foliage, sniffing around and palming the tree. Was that my tree? The one I'd been leaning against earlier? The thought terrified me. Could he smell me? Then he did something I still have nightmares about today. He squatted and placed his hands in the dirt between his feet and stared straight up like a dog, mid-howl. And I heard it. A voice coming from that direction. A very compelling female voice. Help! I'm lost. There was a long pause, but neither of us moved a muscle. The center of my sights was trained at the dirt in front of his feet. I couldn't bring myself to aim directly at another person. It went against everything I'd been taught about firearms. Were they lost? Was this some guy that had gone crazy out here? Why was his voice so feminine? Help! Please, I can't walk, the voice called out again. That's when I called bullshit. Not only could he walk, when I first saw him, he was traversing the land with ease for a naked person. So good I mistook him for a bear. That's a fucking trap. This guy is trying to lure me to him with a damsel in distress routine. Luckily, the lack of activity before had caused me to pack up most of my gear. I think I may have left behind a hat and a sitting pad, but I didn't give a shit at that moment. I took my eyes off him for a moment to get my pack on. I buckled my chest strap and scrambled for my rifle. To my horror, he was sitting in the same position, but his face was staring in my direction, and I swear I saw a smile. The thermal scope has an effect that makes animals' eyes appear white. How the hell had he heard me get up and put my gear on? He must have easily been 150 yards away. Fuck off, I screamed in that direction. He stood upright and it hit me how tall and skinny he was. Easily 6 feet and very lean. He took a couple of long strides in my direction and I instinctively sent a round sailing above his head into the tree line. He was freaky as hell, but he hadn't really threatened me. What would I tell the cops? I was unwilling and unready to shoot someone. He stopped dead in his tracks and hunched down on all fours. The next one will fuck you up. Go away. He stayed on all fours, and this time I had my sights trained on the center of him. His eyes were just above the grass like a large cat or something. I was trying to stop my trembling and knew that my voice had cracked a little on that last warning. I was terrified. That standoff probably only lasted a minute or two, maybe less, but it felt like forever. In an instant, he bolted left towards the tree line opposite the road. So much for not being able to walk. I could barely keep him in my scope, he was moving so fast. He disappeared into the brush, and I sent another bullet sailing high in his direction. I racked another round and tried to pocket that mag and swap for a fresh one, but I dropped it and didn't bother looking for it. I wasn't far from my truck, and I wanted to get out of here. I could hear him in the distance, yelling in this weird sound that could have been a laugh or a cry. I scrambled up the trail and arrived at my truck breathless. I tossed my gear into the cab, but kept the rifle in my passenger seat and sped off. For the longest time I told that story from the perspective of having spotted some deranged crackhead living off the land like some kind of caveman. I reported it to Fish and Game, but all they did was scold me for hunting at night alone. Never received an update. It wasn't until I told this story at a camping trip that my nephew told me about Wendigos, rakes, and skinwalkers. My story scared the piss out of him because the spot we were camping was technically the same forest I'd seen the bastard, just 50 miles east of it. He was so spooked, his mom, which was my cousin, had to take him home. She was really pissed. I've gone down the rabbit hole one of these scary stories. I'm not saying what I saw definitely was a Wendigo or a skinwalker. I'm saying that if such a thing exists, I may have dodged quite the bullet that night. Or maybe it was just a tweaker being Donnie Thornberry in the middle of the night. Either way, thought I'd share. So, to preface, I would like to state that this story is probably going to read like the plot of a campy 1980s horror movie and is going to be very long. However, this entire story is true. If not for being 5 miles from cell reception and the way the story ends, there would be a police report for verification. I will be changing names, locations, and some details in order to protect the privacy of the innocent. A buddy of mine and I try to camp twice a month now that I have a vehicle that can be trusted to get me to some of the more remote areas of our state. We planned a camping trip for this past weekend, which was the February 18th to February 20th. We chose a fairly remote location we had been to the previous weekend. The previous weekend, we were the only people we'd seen within 1 mile of our camp spot. Friday night, we got there and set up. This story takes place Saturday night. It's about 9 p.m., so the sun is long gone and the moon hasn't quite risen yet. It's pitch black out, other than what our fire lights up. Suddenly, we hear a man screaming. We listen intently, silently sharing an anxious look. At first, we were hoping it was someone drunk and having a little too much fun, but it quickly becomes obvious this isn't fun party screaming. It isn't even like he's hurt. It sounds full of despair, anguish, and anger. I'm going to take a moment to remind you that this is at 9 p.m. Pitch black night, in the middle of nowhere, woods 5 miles from the nearest cell phone signal. We hadn't seen anyone in hours. The screaming continues for what felt like hours, but was probably about 5 solid minutes. We had no idea what to make of it, and started feeling extremely paranoid. We gathered up anything remotely close to a weapon and tried to come up with explanations of the screaming while keeping our eyes on the forest around us. After about 15 tense minutes of fear-induced paranoia, I nearly fell out of my seat as I watched a flashlight and lantern slowly enter our camp. I greeted the stranger with a basic, "How's it going?" before he was even lit up by the fire. He responded quickly but flatly by asking if we could do him a favor. "That depends on the favor, my buddy," and I said in unison, obviously tense, holding our weapons close to us. The stranger proceeded to ask if he could hang out for a second by the fire. Given the two of us and one of him, plus our myriad of weapons gathered from around camp to within our arm's reach, we decided to agree and let him hang out. After a short second of awkward silence, I ask him what the hell is going on. He proceeds to tell me and my buddy that he was camping down the trail with his buddy, and that his buddy had snapped and tried to kill him. Wait, what? I said before the thought even finished processing in my head. Is that the screaming we heard earlier? The man slowly nods, staring blankly into the fire, and begins his story. "We were just hanging out, man. We came up earlier today and my buddy just freaked out. He started screaming and just wouldn't stop. Then he attacked me. He lunged at me, and I told him to just back off and chill, you know? Well, he kept coming after me and it started getting pretty violent, and I'm pretty sure he was going to kill me, so I grabbed my car keys, the lights, and ran. I don't know what to do, man. He chased me when I ran, and I don't know what to do. We don't have firearms or anything, but we do have a hatchet." My buddy and I looked at each other for a second, completely astonished. Then something horrible dawned on me. Wait, he chased you? Like he's on his way here? Right now? The man just slowly nods in reply, and right on cue, like some terrible horror movie come to life, we heard screaming just maybe 30 to 40 feet from our camp, down on the main trail. I just want your fucking balance, Gary. I want your balance, Gary. Gary, where are you? Where? Gary. I never in my life heard a man scream like this. I've never heard anything like it in my life. It was a brutal, guttural scream that was shrill to the ears yet deep in pitch. The sound of someone gone completely mad. In the way he said the stranger's name would switch erratically from long and sing-songy to short, guttural punches of sound. We killed our lights, became silent, and listened. By some miracle, the madman didn't notice our camp and continued walking down the trail, screaming the whole way. We ended up chatting with who we'll call Gary for hours, listening to the screaming getting further and further. Come to find out, they'd taken 4.5 to 5 grams of magic mushrooms each, and his buddy, who we'll call Ty, was a coworker of his and was fine for 3.5 hours, then suddenly snapped. It seemed as though Ty thought he could kill Gary and steal his good trip. We heard the screams get further and further for over 2 hours. By this time, it's 11 p.m. The moon is starting to come out, and it's below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Ty had no jacket or flashlight according to Gary. My buddy and I are way too drunk to drive out of camp and to get cell service, as it was snowy and icy and required 2 to 3 miles of highway driving after getting off the trail. And Gary was still lightly feeling the effects of weed and mushrooms, so he couldn't drive either. We had to make the decision to let the guy wander, hope he sobered up, and could find his way back. And he did. Oh, he did. Right into our camp. We hear yelling about an hour of no screams, maybe 30 to 50 feet from camp. Hey, help! Please help me, I'm lost. And we can tell the man's walking from the woods into our camp. We tell Gary to hide just in case and greet the man with me carrying my 12-gauge shotgun and my 40 caliber pistol holster, my buddy carrying his AK-47 style rifle and his 2 9mm Glocks holstered, and with our flashlights on our brightest settings in his face. He was about 6'2 to 6'3 and approximately 300 pounds. We talked to him, decided he was calm enough to walk with, and walked him back to his camp. He seemed really remorseful, said he blacked out and didn't remember anything, and he had a falling out with his buddy. He escorted him back to his camp down the trail, returned and told Gary that Ty seemed cool, and if anything else happened to scream and come running. We would come and help him out. Ended up being a happy ending. We made friends with Gary, and I got his phone number to make sure the next day he got back into town safely, back to his wife and kid, and we're actually planning a camping trip with him soon. But Ty, who wandered screaming like a deranged maniac into the forest, potentially wielding a hatchet to murder your friend to steal his good trip, or whatever it is in your psychosis-filled mind was thinking, for the love of God, let's not meet again. And alright, that wraps up the Reddit stories video. And I hope you enjoyed watching. I only had just because I couldn't really find any more good ones, to be honest. So if you guys have any stories, make sure to send them to me. My email is down below, my official email. So yeah, send some stories or comment them down below if you want me to read them. Yeah, I'm just still looking for good stories. So thank you for watching to the end. This was a shorter video, but I'll have a longer Reddit stories video coming out soon. But yeah, thank you for watching. Until next time, see ya.